Democrats have so totally abandoned the working class, voters of all colors, that growing numbers of non-whites are looking for alternatives. Among Congress members, Republicans are the more vocal anti-interventionists right now. Marjorie Taylor Greene is out here outflanking squad members on the absurdity of giving aid to Ukraine while American babies starve.
That was Brianna Joy Gray publicly defending or caping or whatever for Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, this was during a discussion of Tucker Carlson and whether or not Tucker Carlson was right. So now, look, I'll get to that in a minute, right? But look, she said Marjorie Taylor Greene is outflanking the squad. What? Now, her premise, her premise that Democrats have abandoned the working class, I think that's largely true. I don't have any issue with that. Are the Democrats the party of the donors? Yes. We do know this. There are a few elected officials in the Democratic Party that do care about working class voters, but right now they're pretty well outnumbered by corporate Democrats. Now, she also noted that it is easier for the $40 billion in Ukraine aid to get out the door than it does aid for the American people. And I think that also is a good criticism. Those are facts. I don't have any issue with pointing that out. But when she praises Marjorie Taylor Greene, well, that's when she flies off into absurdity. Look, Marjorie Taylor Greene is not outflanking the squad from the left. I'm sorry, on what planet is that happening? Oh, well, Joe Biden, he didn't do anything about the baby formula shortage, but could find time to send money to Ukraine. Oh, okay, first of all, does the government make baby formula? No, they don't. Is she advocating for the government to make baby formula? No. So look, that said, are there issues with the supply chain with baby formula? Yes, the right wing has been attacking them on that issue for a while, attacking the Biden administration. So now look, here's what the Biden administration is doing right now. They've recently, as of yesterday, invoked the Defense Production Act to make more baby formula. All right, look, that's the bare minimum, but I'll take it. That's great. And again, the government does not make formula, so it's not like they could have increased production or whatever, right? And one of the major companies that did, Abbott Laboratories, was recently shut down because of a whistleblower who had talked about this company allowing contamination, Chronobacter specifically, of their infant formula. So now this company, according to the whistleblower, the executives knew that this machine was broken and that there was the possibility that some of their supply would be contaminated. Now, they knew it, they didn't do anything about it, and instead they spent $5.7 billion on buying back their own stocks. And you know who shut them down? The Biden FDA. That seems like the right thing to do, to shut down a company that is putting out contaminated baby food. Now, unfortunately, since they had such a large market share of baby food, of baby formula, that did have a significant impact on the supply. There were places in certain parts of the country that weren't getting enough. And of course, there are places in other parts of the country that had enough. So there was a shortage in certain areas. And because of the shortage, you kind of had to go and find baby formula in different areas. Some places were out, some places had some. So now the right wing, of course, jumped on this and said, oh, it's Joe Biden's fault. It's all Joe Biden's fault. And it's because, well, they're sending all the baby formula to the border for the immigrants. What are they supposed to do? Not send the formula to the immigrants who are in detention, who can't exactly leave? They can't go on Amazon and order, baby formula to come in. They can't go to the Walmart. They can't leave. They're in detention. What do you expect them to do? And of course, the federal government, as a result of the Flores settlement, has to feed them. I mean, again, Republicans are out there saying, starve immigrant babies. And Brianna Joy Gray is saying, well, but they're starving American babies by sending money to Ukraine. Those things are not mutually exclusive, by the way. And again, what was the FDA to do? Not shut it down? Now, okay, so let's get to the outflanking of the squad, right? So what's interesting is here, yesterday there were two bills. Now, these two bills were put into Congress that were meant to address some of these issues. In fact, on Wednesday, the House of Representatives overwhelmingly passed the Access to Baby Formula Act. Okay? So now, how did that vote go? And I'll explain what that is, by the way. 414 votes in favor, 9 opposed. 9 opposed. So look, this was incredibly bipartisan. That bill would have made it easier for poor people to get access to formula, people on WIC, and also would have required formula manufacturers to place contingencies in order to prevent the supply disruptions. So now, 9 people voted no, well, in the House. Well, squad members are in the House. Was it the squad? Did they vote against this? Well, let's take a look. No votes were cast by Representatives Andy Biggs, Lauren Boebert, Thomas Massey, Clay Higgins, Matt Gaetz, Chip Roy, Paul Gosar, Louis Gohmert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. What? Wait a minute. I thought she was outflanking the squad. What are you doing? Marjorie Taylor Greene saw poor people getting prioritized and said, no, I don't care about poor people. If you're poor, fuck off. Your baby can starve. Even if it's American baby. If it's an American baby. But if it's poor, fuck them. Now, there was a second bill, by the way. H.R. 7790. Now, that also went along with this bill, and it proposed a $28 million cash infusion to help the FDA address the current formula shortage and prevent future supply chain issues. So now, the Rosa DeLauro, who's the person that introduced this bill, told NBC before the vote that most of the money in her legislation would go to staffing the FDA and to bolster its inspection forces. Now, remember, this was because inspectors were lied to by Abbott Labs, right? The people working at Abbott Labs fooled the inspectors. They hid the brokenness of the machines from these inspectors. And of course, we know that because of defunding, there generally is never enough inspectors in these workplaces to begin with, right? And so there's not really oversight here. So now you would think that, hey, putting a little bit more funding into this, into inspections, into food safety inspectors would be a good thing to keep the baby food from getting contaminated again, right? So now, how did Marjorie Taylor Greene vote on that? Did she vote in favor of sending this money to help American babies be able to get safe formula? Her vote is a nay. How weird. Oh my God. Marjorie Taylor Greene. How? I thought you were supposed to be outflanking the squad from the left. And yet, what about AOC? Okay, what was AOC's vote then? Did she vote against this? No. She voted in favor of it. All Democrats voted for this in the House. Oh man, weird. Oh, that's super weird. It's almost like Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't actually give a shit about starving babies. Starving American babies, by the way. Or, by the way, being anti-war, because that's the other thing, right? So she talked about, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene voted against sending the $40 billion of aid to Ukraine. Okay. So now look, here's the thing. Marjorie Taylor Greene claims to be anti-war, but is invested in Lockheed Martin. She bought stock 2 days before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So, come on. She knew that this bill was going to pass anyway. So do a show vote against it. Well, we're going to do that. We're going to do a show vote against it so I can say I'm against war while then reaping in the profit. That's the sleight of hand that you have from these Republicans, from people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. And by the way, I actually don't like the fact that we sent $40 billion to Ukraine without any sort of, COVID stuff attached to it. That would have been nice. Some domestic spending for average Americans. And I think it is a problem that it is so easy for us to pass giveaways to the defense contractors, not to mention, of course, the rubber stamps. And again, some of this includes the squad, voting in favor of increasing the military budget. I'm against all of those things, right? But again, this is not taking formula out of the mouths of starving babies. Now, Republicans, as I mentioned, have actually been trying to do that when it comes to immigrants. Did you not know that, Brianna? I'm sure you knew. You're a smart person. You get it. You've probably seen it. But let's go to the next one, because the next video is even more infuriating. So this is Brianna defending Tucker Carlson, his language when it comes to immigrants.
In the wake of the Buffalo massacre, Tucker Carlson has come under scrutiny as perhaps the most high-profile purveyor of this narrative. He, of course, does not advocate for physical violence against non-white populations or anyone. In fact, Tucker Carlson is fastidiously race-neutral in his language, frequently adopting the famous colorblind quote from Martin Luther King, and stressing that his interest is in protecting American culture and the American way of life. Now, liberals interpret these statements about, America being stolen, etc., as dog whistles, as veiled references to a white way of life. But Tucker Carlson never says that explicitly. And the more liberals accuse him of broadly being racist without being able to articulate why what he said is wrong, the more Tucker gains credibility.
Tucker Carlson gaining credibility. Race neutral. Tucker Carlson, he's very race neutral because he doesn't specifically say do harm to immigrants. Well, you know what a dog whistle is, right? It's you saying something in just the right way to get the right people who are listening for that whistle to understand what you're saying. And so it's, look, in the way that dogs will hear certain frequencies, racists will hear the code words. They'll hear things like invasion, replacement, change the population of the United States and think, well, obviously they're coming after white people. They're going to replace us. I mean, why do you think Nick Fuentes is praising Tucker for getting out that his white nationalist talking points? Why do you think other white nationalists and white supremacists like David Duke love Tucker Carlson's show? They say, that's my guy. He represents us. He's getting out our worldview to the masses. He is red-pilling everyone all over the place. Bree, we all know what he means. We all know. Now, of course, she tweeted, and she was called out by Jordan Sheridan. Here's what he said to Bree. Disagree on this. Carlson discussion doesn't require much nuance. It's clear who he's referring to when he decries the invasion targeting legacy Americans. It's not a dog whistle. It's a siren. Of course, he's not responsible for white supremacy, but clear what he's doing. So look, that's a good call out. Yes, of course, nobody here is blaming Tucker Carlson as the originator of white supremacy. That's ridiculous. But he is using white supremacy and white nationalism as talking points on his show in order to get viewers. So, but here's what she responds to, I'm sorry. Well, a lot of folks don't think it's clear. Oh, really? Very interesting. I wonder what kind of folks aren't clear about that. And then adds, and because white liberals like to smugly assert dog whistle instead of explaining what racism is. Because frankly, they can't. My people get murdered. read the comments under the video. I have Tucker supporters finally getting it. Oh, okay. So look, I went and I read the comments, right? And all of them were like, oh, Brianna, thank you so much for explaining in this in such a clear way. All right. So again, there are the comments. I read some of the comments. But I don't know. I had this feeling like, I don't know. How could you not know what racism is? Maybe I'm a fucking smug liberal and I don't get it. But to me, it doesn't seem all that difficult to grasp that saying, oh, immigrants are coming over, to replace us, when in reality, of course, you have people that are coming in to request asylum as a result of poor economic conditions that are caused, of course, by some U.S. imperialism. Okay, we've definitely done a lot of that, overthrowing other countries, their elected leftist leaders. You also have, of course, issues with, economic problems caused by the United States. For example, we over-subsidize corn. The government subsidized the shit out of corn. Well, what did that put corn farmers in Mexico? And put them out of business. That massively impacted their own economy. And so what do when they're desperate? Well, they got to come here. They got to come somewhere, right? So you have that. And of course, you have the drug war. All very important critiques that you could critique the Biden administration, by the way, from the left, because he hasn't ended the drug war. He hasn't decriminalized marijuana or any of the other Schedule I drugs. There are plenty of ways that you can attack Joe Biden and the Democrats from the left without giving aid and comfort to Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson. I mean, it just seems ridiculous. And again, I love the whole idea of like, oh, they're replacing you. They're Tucker Carlson, they're replacing you. Does that mean that they're going to take you and ship you out somewhere, or ship you to another country? That seems weird. Are they going to dump you in a hole somewhere? It's very vague language. No, you're not going anywhere. Nothing is changing for you unless, except you might see a few more brown people around. But I guess for Tucker Carlson's audience, oh no, that sets off all the alarms. Because they're afraid, of course, that if they ever do become a minority in this country, white people, that they're going to get treated the way that they currently treat brown people and black people. Now, if you're afraid of that, I got news for you. You might be a little racist. But you know what's good? There's a positive thing here. Racism, it can be cured. You can cure that ignorance with knowledge. It's not like racism has to stick with you. It is a learned behavior, and it can be unlearned. And I think that's really important, right? And so, look, if you want to point out, like, hey, this is what racism is to right-wingers, I mean, well, good luck. I mean, yes, not every right-winger is an insane racist, but I think for a lot of them, it's not a deal breaker. And that's unfortunate. Now, for people like Tucker Carlson, however, well, they go out there every day and ensure that people stay fearful of immigrants from coming in from the southern border and lie about the reasons people are coming into this country. It is not to replace you. It's not to take your job. It's not to take your wife, or your girlfriend, or impose Sharia law on you or anything like that. No, they're here to try to get a better life. And we should actually afford them a pathway to citizenship, ways to help them integrate into this country economically. And by the way, if you're out there omitting the benefits of immigration on our economy and our culture, well, I mean, then look, you're leaving out in a very important context, because those benefits for our society, our country, are indisputable facts. Look, all of this, it really shows me that there are people out there who are so absolutely desperate to attack the Democrats, and that they end up falling into the trap of allying with the right wing. and enabling fascism. Look, I don't blame Bree for being mad at Democrats. There's a lot of things from 2016 and 2020 that left a bad taste in all of our mouths as progressives. Absolutely. Sure, you can be mad, but don't be so mad that you fall into the arms of right-wingers and start caping for them. Look, Breonna Joy Gray was smeared relentlessly during the 2020 campaign when she was the spokeswoman for Bernie Sanders. I saw those headlines. But that's not, again, politics is fucking dirty. And we all know this. We all know this. But if you're so mad, if you're still so salty about that, that you end up defending Tucker Carlson to own the libs, especially members of the squad, because they didn't force the vote, I don't think that's a good direction to go into. Let me just remind people that you can fight against the establishment without giving aid and comfort to the right wing, who need it the least.